In addition to one nasty virus, it's been going by the name of COVID-19. There's a lot of stress going around these days. Everyone has been affected in one way or another. And I know for me, getting the mind to settle down these days has been a real challenge.
No kidding. It just keeps you spinning constantly. It's a great idea to have something around from our sponsor, Floyd's of Leadville. Because while Floyd's created their CBD products with exercise-induced stress in mind, it can really come in handy in times like these as well, when the news of the day needs to be offset with some rest and recovery.
Yeah, for me, a dose of the tincture at the end of the day does the trick. The drops are full spectrum, that is, which means the CBD effects are on the stronger side. The drops also have a stronger taste. But for me, the relax and recovery benefits are better and the absorption faster. So I like the drops. But if you want something milder, try the capsules.
Yeah, find what works for you, whether it's a hard session on the trainer or watching the Coronavirus Task Force press conference. Stress is stress, and you definitely need something to help you recover, and that's what Floyd's of Leadville is for. Be sure to check out Floyd's of Leadville, our presenting sponsor for 2 seasons in a row now. I guess it's 3 seasons no, 2. Okay, I needed to learn some math. At floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on all your orders.
Now, what you need is some CBD from Floyd's of Leadville.
There we go.
Yeah. And again, not just the first 2 orders, but all of your orders, because we have it on good authority that Floyd Landis loves you.
Oh, of course he does. Thanks, Floyd's of Leadville, for sponsoring the show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 3, episode 3 of the show that breaks down, builds you up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Hutton. You'll hear the other person on this show call me Hottie.
I think everyone calls you Hottie, and I am Eldon Nelson, the one that everyone calls Fatty. And on this show, we are going to be covering a topic we've not covered before, bike fit. Hottie's got a great interview with Nate Loyal of Loyal Coaching, who has been doing fits for almost 25 years. And this is not some generic bike fit Q&A. It is not. We're putting questions to our guest on the specifics of mountain bike fitting, saddle height, bar height, crank length, the effects of a dropper post on fit, all of that. Hottie's going to be covering a bunch of topics with Nate Loyal of Loyal Coaching.
Yeah, we know it is nearly impossible right now to get a bike fit in these days of social distancing, but we wanted to get this episode out early in our season so you can act on this information. Maybe get a fit once our lives return to normal, which will hopefully be well before the LT100.
Yep, maybe insert knock on wood sound effect here. And that's going to get us into our new segment, our question of the week. We debuted this in the previous episode when we asked whether you thought there would be a Leadville 100 this summer on its scheduled date. This year, we're moving away from that hypothetical, speculative type of question, and we're shifting over to something very concrete, standing versus sitting on big climbs.
Yeah, Tony Corley over in the Leadville 100 Slack channel says, question here, guys, did you guys ever discuss the logic of standing versus sitting on big climbs? He's a bigger rider, 5'10", 215 pounds. He says, I try to stay seated to keep my heart rate down. And he says he heard Eldon Fatty Nelson say he stands a lot when he climbs.
I do stand a lot when I climb. And I believe we have talked about standing versus sitting in climbs with Jonathan Lee back in season 2. You know, I don't know exactly which episode. We can find that. We'll maybe get that in the show notes. But all of that aside, I'm going to just say, don't treat me as a role model. I've ridden single speed long enough and early enough in my cycling career that I have developed a really hard to break habit of choosing a big gear and a low cadence for my long climbs. I've become pretty good at it, but I am assured that it is not the best way to use the power and energy I have. I do remember a true story here. Once upon a time, I was doing a group ride with Rebecca Rush and some other folks up to the top of Columbine and back. And when she saw the way that I was climbing, and I was in a geared bike, not on a single speed, she looked at me, made this sound of genuine disgust, and said to all of the riders around us, "Look at Fatty if you want to know how not to climb Columbine." That was the year that she had Lisa race with her and helped sort of coach her to her first sub-9. And she told her over and over, "You stop with that standing nonsense." But that said, I love my standing climb, and I'm probably never going to change.
Yeah, regarding cadence, first of all, and cadence and climbing do go hand in hand. I mean, cadence is like this real personal thing. It's almost like we all have our own internal cadence that we're comfortable with. And a lot of times on a climb, that can be, the pitch of a climb can really, really affect that. I mean, we all aren't spinners, right, Fatty? I think you've proven that we'd love to be. Everyone would love to be able to crank it up to 115 RPMs and spin their way right up Columbine. But the fact of the matter, that isn't always the case. So if you're a low cadence person, if that's where you feel comfortable, then you're probably going to have to find yourself getting out of the saddle once in a while. The other thing about standing versus sitting, and we've heard this from Josh Portner a little bit in our discussions with him on marginal gains, that you can lose some power. Like there is some energy that gets a little lost when you sway your bike side to side, because truly the bike is not going straight when you do that. And so, yes, standing, again, is going to cost you a little bit when you do it for long periods of time, if you were to add up all those kind of that lost energy. But again, like we said, if you are comfortable in a certain cadence, then yeah, you could probably have to stand once in a while. Look, one of the greatest climbers of all time, Alberto Contador, he was a prolific. That guy stood all the time. He'd stand all his way up HC climbs in the Tour de France. And while we're not Contador, no, it proves that you can be an efficient stander as well. So find what's comfortable for you. Do your thing. If it means getting out of the saddle once in a while and swaying and climbing and doing the fatty thing, go for it.
Yeah, and I definitely do some of my climbing seated, although I do definitely stand most of the time. If you were wearing a Camelback or some other hydration pack, of course, if you are standing while you're climbing, you are lifting your pack each time you move to a standing position. And that is a little bit of an extra effort. So, kind of look for ways to not, if you're going to be doing a lot of changing from positions, maybe look for keeping your bottles or your hydration in a cage, just so you're not constantly lifting all that extra water up and down and spending extra energy that way. Also, I think it is just a good idea, no matter what you're going to do primarily, to practice with both, because it is good to have multiple abilities and capabilities in your cycling climbing quiver. Be able to give your sit bones a break. If you usually sit when you climb, it's good to stand up for a second just to get, to feel a little bit better and feel your legs use their muscles a little bit differently. You can attack short, punchy stuff. But mostly, if you are trying to get good at one kind of climbing, make it high cadence climbing if you can. Unless you're single speeding, in which case, get used to standing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I could stand to learn to stand more, Fatty. I mean, I'm one of those type who will just sit their way. If left to my own devices, I will just sit all the way up Columbine, which isn't great either. I mean, you should also be able to get out of your saddle, relieve things, use a different muscle group a little bit, and then go ahead and sit back down. Thanks to Tony for that great question, though, which came to us on our Slack workspace. Next week, our question is going to be, what's the dumbest thing you've ever done in an endurance race? Uh-oh. And we'll need at least a week to think about
whole
that.
Episode.
Yeah. We're going to answer that with our own dumb decisions, as well as include a few of yours. So text us with those at 719-239-8016.
Yeah, and you can also leave a voicemail. We would love to include your voice on our show. Our Leadville hotline, once again, same number here, 719-239-8016. Ask us a question or tell us something dumb you've done. We'd love to hear both.
If you get a chance to check out some of the pictures from this year's Mid-South gravel race in Stillwater, Oklahoma, I encourage you to do so. The conditions there were out of this world.
I looked at all of the photos that you've posted on Facebook, Hottie, and they've given me nightmares. The amount of mud that was sticking to bikes and riders, I honestly do not know how anyone completed that thing.
Yep, I was there in support of a friend of mine. Somehow he got through the 100 miles of muck and slop, and one reason he got through was because of his component choice. He was riding that is Shimano Di2. Nothing fancy here, mostly Ultegra level stuff, but bling was not the call of the day in Stillwater. Durability was, and that's exactly what he got out of his Shimano stuff. Were his components a mess when they came in? Absolutely. Will he be replacing some bearings and probably the chain? Most certainly. But the point is, despite collecting what was probably 5 pounds of mud, he made it in. The Di2 was still shifting and the brakes were still stopping. Barely, but they were stopping.
Sometimes barely is good enough. I have never seen a day like that at Leadville, and I hope to never see a gloppy, soupy day at Leadville. But bad weather can happen there, and it has. Anyone who ever raced it in the year 2000 knows that is the truth. And Shimano's ability to get you through whatever mess the weather has, you definitely go with Shimano for sure. Go to bike.shimano.com for more. We're also going to have a link in the show notes for this episode at leadville100podcast.com. Again,
we're going to get to our interview with Nate Loyal of Loyal Coaching on Bike Fit. And folks, we know that this show, including this interview, is what we've always tried to do, I should say, is make this show really evergreen. Like, give you a show that whether you listen to it today as it comes out or 2 years from now, the information is going to be relevant. And we think the interview that you're about to hear is one of those cases. Nonetheless, we also know, and as you've probably heard if you've been listening to season 3 at all, that we can't ignore the elephant in the room, or the virus in the room, as it were, and that's the COVID-19, the coronavirus. And so Fatty and I have at least tried to incorporate what's going on in our lives in this show. And for instance, like we said earlier in the show, you may not be able to go out and get a bike fit right now, today. We get that. There's social distancing going on, but we wanted you to have this information now so you could act on it. So with all that said, Fatty, have you ever had a bike fit?
I have, but I don't have an excuse like a pandemic for how long it's been. It has been more than a decade since I've had a bike fit. I'm actually still riding with the same MTB bike fit measurements of my 40-year-old, I think 45-year-old self. It is without question time for me to get an update. I'm definitely a different rider than I was back then.
Ooh, then this interview is for you. In fact, Nate and I talk about that very topic, about how often you should get a bike fit. I've been fit a couple of times myself, but never on my mountain bike, actually. And it got me thinking about never being, fit on a mountain bike. I wonder if our listeners are kind of in the same boat. So I reached out to Nate Loyal. Nate is well-known in the LA area as a coach and bike fitter. He works out of 3 locations, in fact, in Southern California, but most notably at Helen's Santa Monica, where he has a fit studio. His bike fitting experience started in the 90s using a $50 Nishiki and a CompuTrainer. And Nate says he noticed at the time by making fit changes, he could increase power and speed. As his riding improved, he turned to racing, where he met his mentor, the well-known coach Max Testa. Max has coached many of our top road cyclists and shared with Nate his idea on fit and fitness. Nate has also studied kinesiology in his pursuit to further understand bike position and efficiency.
Yeah, once it's okay to do so, sounds like I need to make a trip out to LA. One last note before we begin, don't go get a bike fit before it's okay to go and get a bike fit. If you have questions about social distance, err on the side of safety, right? Whether, you might be shedding or getting coronavirus, stay in place and, wait until it's safe to go. And be safe, wait till we're all clear.
Good point, Fatty. With that, I met up with Nate at his Fit Studio in Santa Monica. This was prior to COVID-19, in fact, breaking out in the U.S., where we kick things off with his take on getting bike and rider to blend as one.
So really the thing is with Fit is fitting the bike to the rider, right? So many people get a bike and they're like, okay, I need to ride it for a while to get used to it, and then I can have it set up. And I sort of equate it to like buying a ill-fitting suit and wearing it around a while, and maybe then I'll know what adjustments I need to make. And it's more of, hey, let's get it tailored, get you going properly, get the right techniques, and then as you get more riding in, we can make tweaks further to improve whatever if you're having issues. What are those? Maybe it's the durations or intensities, or you've changed, as I like to use the suit tailor analogy. The waistline goes out, waistline goes in. We gotta tailor that. But then also experience level, and okay, it's not always keeping things conservative. Okay, maybe we can make things more aggressive without it truly feeling more aggressive. It's just right for the rider.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who are riding right now and they're thinking, well, I'm having no problems. I'm having no pain. Do I really need a bike fit? Do I?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. If you're, my litmus test is if you're riding, say, consistently, 2 days a week or more, yeah, just from an injury prevention standpoint, performance is obviously important, but an injured, professional athlete is, not going to perform well. So, you take it down to somebody who's just trying to, go out and have fun or compete at their level. We got to keep them healthy. They'll ride more. Thus, if they ride more, well, they get stronger.
Yeah. A lot of us can and do set up our own bikes, and we probably get it reasonably close. We can get our saddle height probably about right. Maybe some of us know how to do a plumb bob with the knee over the pedal spindle. But what do you see most folks miss or get wrong when they try to set up their own bikes?
Saddle height for sure. I'd say 95% of the time it's just too low. People are just really conservative. It's very, when you start getting it into the right range, it's really easy to overshoot and get the saddle height too high. But it's not just height. It's not just fore aft. It's how those two adjustments work together to get the right leverages. But really one of the biggest things that I tell people is cleat position. Cleat position is so incredibly important. That's such a big factor in the way the mechanics of the legs work. So making sure that we get the cleat position correct to the rider, and that could be foot to foot. It's like your fingerprint, right? It's only right for you. All right. The way you're think of your foot's like on a gimbal, and we're just trying to see how that foot moves and lands, and if we can give it proper support, then the rest of the leg aligns in a vertical fashion. Then with the saddle position, then we get the right overall mechanics of the leverages there.
Like I said, we're here at Helen, Santa Monica, which is one of the places you do bike fits, and we are surrounded by, right now, in Nate's studio, Colnago, Pinarello. This is a Trek dealer. They have lots of Treks downstairs. Primarily what we're looking at right in front of us are road bikes. And I think there's probably a perception, especially amongst us mountain bikers, that bike fitting is for road bikers. I mean, that's what road bikers go out and do. And mountain bikes, geez, we're so dynamic. We get up and down out of the saddle so much. Bike fitting doesn't really affect us mountain bikers like it does maybe road biking. Maybe you can clear up that conception or misconception, as it probably is. What is the difference between road bike fitting and mountain bike fitting? And I'm guessing this is going to be a long answer.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it probably is. With that road bike fitting, on the road, the terrain that we're on there, it's smooth. The gradients are pretty standard. You're not getting caught out by anything odd typically. With that, it's usually when everything is going right, so we can really focus on the absolute proper technique there. With mountain biking, there's so much body English that goes into riding. You get on the trail, single track, something like that, gnarly climb, descent, you're going to be all over the bike. What I always sort of explain it to with just look at your baseline, right? If our baseline is correct, right, we can ebb and flow around the proper mechanics without being, say, too far off the reservation. Or in some cases, when you're really going up something super gnarly or down something super gnarly, you really got to move around the bike that much more. So, okay, we want to make sure at least our starting point is solid. So you have the most range to go, both, say, forward or backward on the bike, and really change up how the bike is handling, how legs are working, being able to, if you're climbing something steep, keeping the front end down with still being able to produce proper power without, again, injury. That's the biggest thing. So with that, it's protecting the body, but then giving you the most tools moving around on the bike to utilize that. If, say, I see a lot of times with mountain bikers, saddle's too low, way too far back to get the right leverages in the legs. With that, if a rider, say, slides up on the nose of the saddle, they really haven't gotten to center, or they might be a good center of balance there. They really haven't been able to excessively weight the front end of the bike. Say if you're going up something, 15, 18%, you really got to keep the power down, but you don't want that front wheel popping up on you. And it's tough to get that if your center balance position is off. So that's really, really critical. With, say, cleat position, we'll a lot of times err on the conservative side there, especially if we're doing, say, Leadville or 24-hour mountain bike races, things like that, where it's all fatigue. Everybody's going to have fatigue. So if we can lessen that, right, the rider, say, maybe we're not losing so much on the short end, but we're going to gain a ton on the back end. It's not how fast you are in the first hour; it's how fast are you on the last hour. But if we can keep the body healthy and working properly there, that'll be really, really helpful. Fore aft cleat placement. That's a super critical one. Again, with the road bike. With that, we've got a lot of different efforts, terrains, high intensity. But with that, say with the cadence, something like that, we're not going to be, say, mashing the pedals too much if our technique is good. Where on the mountain bike, you might be going up a switchback. Gotta keep your balance just right, and you just gotta mash those pedals as hard as you can just to get the power down, keep the grip on rear tire grip, and make the turn. So your cadence might be out the window while that force per pedal stroke is really, really high. Well, if we can protect, say, the Achilles tendon, the calf, the lower leg, by going to a little bit more aft cleat placement there, that's really, really beneficial. So the other thing with road and mountain over the last just couple years is dropper posts. So the cool part about dropper posts, from my standpoint with Fit, is when, say, you're climbing, nothing super technical, but, let's just say a really steep fire road or something like that. Well, with the dropper post, we can set your saddle position or essentially your leg mechanics the same way as you would on, say, a road bike. So maximum efficiency, power, etc. But then, say you get into a pedally rough section. All right, well, the nice thing with dropper posts, you can drop it a little bit. You can still keep the mechanics pretty solid, but you just give yourself a little bit more body English. And then you get into more and more technical aspects of the trail. You can drop it even further as need be. And then, bam, right when you get to the next, flat section or climb where you gotta be as strong as you can, well, you put that saddle right back where it needs to be. That's the really cool part about the modern mountain bikes, is so much equipment is out there to allow for a rider to be at their maximum potential.
Specifically for endurance mountain biking, though, or XC riders, is that a specific fit? Do they have specific needs?
Yeah, definitely. With that, we're again looking at more extremes in typically terrain as far as like what they're climbing, right? So we got to make sure that we don't have the front end say too high unless the person has any physical issues. But let's just say a person's healthy. We want to keep the handlebars on the lower side, so you're not going to say tractor the front end over yourself and struggle with keeping the front wheel down. It's finding that balance for the rider, but then also for the ultra long distance stuff, also making sure that we don't go so aggressive. Say somebody's racing short track, sprint XC races. We might come up a little bit from that position just to build in some comfort for the ultra long distance races. So there are some variances there for sure.
But again, you're seeing with a lot of the mountain bikes that people try to push their saddle back a little extra to get a little more leverage, that over the top movement on the pedal. Is that the mistake you're seeing there?
I'm not sure exactly what their thinking is. It's just something that I see commonly, and I ask everyone, if I see something out of place, how is this set up? I'd say most of the time they're like, it just came like that, or I just put a new saddle on, I didn't really think about it, or whatnot. So not really sure about that. But with that it's not so much getting the leverage by moving backwards. Actually, if you think about doing, say, a squat, just standing up straight, balancing yourself over your feet as you stand, right? Do a squat there. You've got a good center of balance. It's going to be very, very tough to get a lot of leverage if you just move your butt back from that center balance just standing, right? So you're not going to achieve a really good leverage aspect there. So actually moving forward from there, that's going to help you with climbing. I sort of equate it to, if you're running down the road, you don't lean back to run up the hill, right? You run through the hill. So, move forward, keep that center of balance. You're going to find that drive. You can also manipulate what muscle groups you're using. And so the more forward you move, more quads and calves, more aft, more hamstrings, hip flexors. And we've my colleagues and I, we've done some research in this with EMG units. They're actual sensors that go on the skin. They can measure muscle engagement in real time, and testing a bunch of different athletes with moving around on the bike, different efforts, cadences, etc. And these are all things that we have sort of known, but now we've been able to do the testing and get actual, raw data from the muscle engagement.
I love that idea of staying centered on the bike. That is so true, especially on a mountain bike where conditions can change instantly. Staying centered on the bike can mean staying on the bike. Now, we've been sending you to thefeet.com for going on our third season now to get all of your Leadville-related nutrition. And while we are big fans of their food and drink, it turns out the Feet is much more. The Feet also has gear, and we are not talking just socks and shirts and hats. We're talking about so much more.
Yeah, the Feet has an entire section devoted to exercise and recovery aids to help you get ready for that big event like the Leadville 100. Yeah, they have mobility balls, trigger point therapy, breathing trainers. I'm a big fan of having a foam roller around, and the Feet has plenty of those. I mean, there's nothing like rolling out the legs after a hard day in the saddle. Check out the Feet's gear section. You can pick out just what you need, or grab one of their recovery kits that has a number of tools you can use to get ready for that next training session.
Yeah, Lisa's got foam rollers laying around all over the house. And we're grateful to the Feet for being back for sponsoring us for a third season. And the same code works as it always has. thefeet.com/Leadville. The code works the same, but instead of this time, you're just getting the box that I like. You can go to that URL and sign up to get a 15% discount on whatever you like, whether it is Morton's or a foam roller or some goo or whatever you like. Once again, thefeed.com/Leadville. Sign up and get that 15% discount.
All right, back to bike fitter Nate Loyal and how new technologies have shaped how we interface with our mountain bikes. The modern mountain bike has seen quite a movement. It's even gotten to the XC bikes now. That is, we're longer front ends, slacker front ends, lower bottom brackets. Is that affecting fit? Shorter stems, is that affecting fits at all?
Not so much with that in general. It's all about the touch points, right? So say if somebody was even get like a full blown custom moots or something like that, right? I usually tell the frame builder, okay, here are the touch points that we want. You're the artist. You fill in sort of the middle of how you want the bike to handle and work. So I haven't really seen much of a change there. The biggest thing that I have seen, though, with the modern bike is with going, say, 29er wheels, the geometry there affecting handlebar width. Right. And so with that, I mean, when we started riding mountain bikes, I mean, you're looking at super, super narrow handlebars. I mean, I remember having a downhill bike where, I mean, gosh, the bars were crazy narrow and I don't know how we even rode those bikes, but with the modern bars and it really from the head tube forward, it's wheel size, fork rake, head tube angle, stem length, bar width, all of that is sort of I see it as one unit. And you start, I see some more old school riders chop down their bars just because they're not used to the wider bar. And that totally throws off the handling. Bike gets super twitchy, doesn't handle well. With the new bikes, with having that slightly wider bar, and this is something that's a little tougher for shorter riders, but we still need to keep it on the wider side, say 760, 780 range, if possible. With that keeps the stability for high speed, say fire road descent, gravel, stuff like that. But then you're still keeping with the way the geometry is set for most of the bikes now is they're still able to keep the quick handling in the tight stuff. So super slow, tight single track, you're going just a couple miles an hour. The bikes handle really well in both regards. And that's I learned a lot about just how that works when Ibis came out with their Ripley. Really, really cool stuff. And they showed us a book on geometries of the bikes. Actually came from motorcycles. I think, gosh, it was like book made in the 60s. It's out of print. They only had one copy. It was like gold to them. And it showed how, all these different head tube angles and fork rakes would affect handling. And they could get a bike to work the same way with a bunch of crazy designs. But with the most stability overall, that's how they came to figure out the geometries for and fork rake for their current bike. And then you've seen the most of the industry follow that style.
I'm glad you brought up handlebar width. How do I know? I recently went to 800s. I haven't cut them down. I just put them on. NV bars, loved them. I haven't done anything with them so far. But how do I know when I've got handlebar width correct?
Really, with that, you're going to know. Well, it's not just handlebar width correct, but with that, it's making sure your reach is also correct. You're not going to have any. You got to also get the sweep right. I see the people getting the sweep angle wrong. A lot of times, the sweep is coming, say, down too low towards their hips or even their feet. You want that sweep coming back more to the chest cavity or the shoulders. And that gives you good countersteering leverage, right? So putting a lot of pressure into the outside of the palms, and being able to be relaxed, nice relaxed hands with that. With the bar width, we don't want the arms locked out, right? And that's really critical. You're a tall guy like myself, and 800. If you're used to narrow bars, from back in the day, it takes a little getting used to. But a couple of rides, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this actually isn't too bad. What you don't want to find is when you're, say, again, going around a switchback or something like that to get the wheel to front, turn properly for the right turning radius is when your arm that's furthest away is fully locked out. your reach or your bar width, that might be a little wide, and we might have to bring that in then to help compensate, because we want to, the suspension on the bikes is fantastic, but your arms, your legs, all that suspension, I consider those parts of the body suspension, that's 1,000 times better than anything on the market today. So
you also brought up fork offset. I love this topic. I've tooled around with it myself. I can tell. Some people say they can't tell the difference. They put a 51 offset on, they put a 48, a 46 on. They can't tell the difference. To me, I can tell. But for the fitter, what are you looking for with fork offset? Will you alter your fork offset choice depending on what the rider intends to do?
Well, that's going to be more with the build and what kind of handling they're looking for. So occasionally I do get a rider, I've say worked with in the past, and it's like, hey, I'm building a new bike. I want your input on this. I will help them choose that, but it comes down to what are they racing, what terrain are they riding, and so with that, there's a lot. It becomes very personal with each rider. Again, where are they riding? What are their goals? Mm-hmm. And making sure that is correct for them.
Mm-hmm. We've got bars. We know wider bars are generally better. We've kind of stated that. Yeah. Stem length now has become this wild topic too. We're seeing very short stems, yet in the XC world, if you look at the World Cup circuit, we're still seeing those low slam stems. I know a lot of the XC riders love that look. Gee, Nate, I love the low stem. I love that slam stem. Can you give that to me? Is that appropriate for me? What's your general take on stem length and slam stem?
Well, stem length, again, that's going to go back to the handling. So the entire front end, the way most of the manufacturers now have set up to allow for, say, a 29er wheel bike to turn properly. So you don't want to be going in a turn and try to turn the bike and it keeps going straight. The first few gen mountain bikes, they would do just that. I actually launched off a trail once when I tried to go into a turn, and the bike, well, it didn't turn. and so with that, it's more the whole front end and what bike you're riding there. But with that, yeah, generally to keep the overall riding or handling characteristics correct, we do err on the shorter style. I mean, heck, I have an old mountain bike, 26-inch wheel at home that's got a easily, I think either a 120 or 130 stem on it. It's not slammed, but with slamming, I mean, whether it be a road bike or a mountain bike, it's all based on the individual. Right, so it's breaking down the rider into, say, legs and torso. With that, if a rider is very long legged for their height, with that, well, they might need say a taller bike vertically, so the offset between saddle and handlebars isn't so great. And then how flexible is the rider? What are they doing, et cetera. But there's plenty of riders where I'll slam the stem and it's still super conservative setup. They're very relaxed. They're not really racing hard or anything like that. And then somebody who is really gunning for, say, a podium position in a race. Well, just based on their body makeup and their proportions. With that, we might not be able to slam the stem, and it's a super aggressive position, right? So somebody really long legs, short torso, we might not be able to achieve that. But it again is keeping the body relaxed, not having fatigue set in. We don't want to place more fatigue on the body. It's a cool look, don't get me wrong. They look fast when they're slammed, but with that, not so much. I mean, even in my own setup, I mean, I'm it's funny to see how my fit has changed over the years. And yeah, I used to have my stem slammed, but I was also a good 40 plus pounds, lighter, skinnier, a lot more time on the bike, a lot more time also working on my core strength off the bike. And I could be in a super aggressive position on road bike, mountain bike, all of it, and take a nap. It was super comfortable. Now, if I was trying to even ride that same position, no chance.
Right. Another thing you'll hear the endurance mountain bikers say, the Leadvillers say is, oh, my hands get numb. I fatigue out, my arms fatigue out once I get to mile 70 or 80 or wherever it might be on the course. Is there something that can be done with fit or with grips or what have you that can at least offset a little bit of that?
Yeah, definitely. So as we talked about earlier, finding that nice center balance, so keeping the body well supported. Again, placing majority of the body weight more in the saddle, not the arms. Again, your arms are the suspension, so we want to keep that as loose as possible. The bike will handle better, which is great, but then also less fatigue, right? So less fatigue we can place on the rider, the better. That sweep that I was talking about, that's also going to help out with the hands and the pressure in the palms. We don't want pressure acutely centered on the center of the palm. You got that groove in the center palm. We want the pressure more on the outsides of the heel of the palm. And then one thing that I've really, really loved is, of all things, the Ergon grips. They, especially for the endurance crowd, anybody doing like Leadville or 24-hour races or just anything in that regard, it just displaces more pressure throughout the palm of the hand. So you find riders, all of a sudden you look at their fingers, what their fingers are doing, they loosen up, right? They're not tensing up as just to hold on to the bar. If we can relax out the hands, then the rest of the arm sort of follows. But again, that pressure displacement on the palm is huge. So even going to the extreme, say downhill or enduro crowd, they have versions that are not as big that help out those riders. But really for anybody doing any sort of cross-country racing or endurance cross-country racing, it's one of those things where I bring it up every time, like, get these grips. It'll be a game changer. Yeah, and Ergon may have started the trend, but others have followed. I mean, I've seen other grip companies, Pro, the Shimano brand, they've got a style of those grips. I think Specialized does. So other companies have come along and go, oh yeah, that works. It definitely relieves fatigue in the hands. Let's move down to the crankset. I think a lot of us assume bike companies ship a bike with a crankset size on it. They got it right. Do they? Is the crankset that we get stock on our bikes correct, or do you see reason to change that? So with the new mountain bikes in the last, let's say 10 years, it's probably not that long, but just rounding out with that, bike companies got a lot better about sizing components for the size of bike that they're getting put on. You go back far enough. 175 crank arm length was standard on all bikes. You look at a 15.5-inch frame mountain bike. Yep, 175s. Okay, now we got a 23-inch frame, 175s, and that's just how it was done. Now we're seeing a lot more options, available. But then also companies have gotten really smart with, okay, hey, look, smaller rider, smaller levers. That's how I look at the legs. Well, we gotta match that up and make sure that we don't over leverage the rider. Also, it gets tough with fit to get the mechanics on the legs right if the crank arms are too long. And that's usually what I see with mountain bikes is the crank arms being a little bit too long for the shorter riders. Companies got a lot better with that, but that's usually one thing that I go into. If, say, again, a rider is of odd proportions, say incredibly long legs for their height, we might go, say, up one size, depending on what's on the bike. Often enough, though, it's usually more geared with the shorter riders, where it's like, these even like 170s are a little on the long side for the rider. I'll definitely recommend a shorter crank, and that just helps out with proper mechanics, leverages, being able to keep the cadences up. There's just so many benefits of that proper crank arm length. Yeah, you can have a pretty profound effect on cadence with length, correct? Definitely. I've back, 18 plus years ago. I did a lot of work with that. I had an SRM power meter just on my road bike, and luckily I had access. This is when they had their own crank arms, so it was their own whole setup. And within 2 minutes, I could change out the crank arms. And so, do a ride, training ride, do a set of intervals on 180s and 175s, then 1725s, then 170s, down to 165s, and it was amazing to see what the power levels were changing. The 3 to 5 second power, the 10, 15, 20 second power, all the way up to a minute, and then 10 minute. What worked best on the extreme. Again, I have an old single speed, spot single speed from the 90s, and I have a one-off Truvative downhill crank that it was a prototype that friends of mine over there had given me. They're 180s, and they are massive. I'm 6'3". I'd say I got decently long legs, nothing crazy, but with that, getting those around is brutal at a high cadence. Pull it off, but it's nice when, again, single speed, not shifting when you're going uphill. So when you're out of the saddle, just cranking up the hill, just trying to get up the hill without stopping. It's nice to have that added leverage. Flip side, for keeping the cadence up, going with the shorter crank arm, it's going to just be so much easier on the body to keep those legs turning over. Higher efficiency, less fatigue on the body. Utilize, if you've done the work, utilizing the cardio fitness that you have, less muscle fatigue, that type of thing. Again, it's that force per pedal stroke that we're looking at, and it's amazing how riders feel good in the 1-2 hour mark, but then you get into that 5-6 plus hour mark, and things start going sort of sideways on people really fast.
Hottie, I am loving this discussion on handlebar width, which of course got me thinking about our sponsor, Envy. Envy has 4 models of mountain bike handlebars, but it's the XC bar that most Leadville racers are going to want to take a look at. The M5 is my go-to. It comes 760 millimeters wide, which is how I ride it, but it can be cut down to 720 millimeters. Just as a factoid, my wife rides hers at 730. Most of us are going to leave them set the standard way with a 5 millimeter rise, but the bar can also be flipped. And in that position, you've got a 5 millimeter drop, which is super convenient for smaller riders. There's only so low a frame stack can go, right? And with standard bars, that'll put smaller riders too high. But the M5 with a flip position, that can improve things. And whether you invert it or leave it normal, the M5 has a nice 9-degree sweep. And I love that. It makes a huge difference for the comfort of my wrists and my hands. They're at a much more normal, natural position.
Yeah, I have the M5 too. I run them stock, so just 5 millimeters of rise. I have them at full length. But if I were to hand them off to Mrs. Hottie, even though she's 9 inches shorter, we could cut and or flip those bars so they could fit her too. That's pretty ingenious.
Yeah, it really is. And you can learn more about Envy's wheels and components, which seem like they were made with Leadville 100 racers in mind, at enve.com. That's envy.com.
Back to our Bike Fit interview now, and our guest, Nate Loyal. We get into what to do when one leg is longer than the other, insoles, and the toughest subject of them all, your saddle. Let's talk about leg length discrepancies. I think when people think of bike fitters, they think of you folks as being able to deal with this problem readily. In road biking, it seems obvious one way you can deal with that is shimming underneath road cleats, and you can create different stack heights. Mountain bike cleats are a little different in that you're relying on the mountain bike or the tread of the mountain bike shoe to make contact with the pedal. In most cases, I know that Speedplay has a pedal that does not require that, but most shoe and pedal combinations require the tread to contact the pedal, and then the cleat clips in that way, and that way you get locked in. You start shimming things get a little... bottom line is, how can you deal with leg length discrepancies when it comes to mountain bike shoes and pedals?
Well, there are shims available out there that can help with this, and so with that. I do have a few clients that I've worked over the years where they have massive leg length discrepancies, even so much that they've taken a pair of shoes and had a shoe cobbler add material to the bottom of the shoe to help with that, and that's just in their regular walking shoes as well. So when I see that, it's like, okay, this is going to be a one-off case, as with every fit, but definitely with a leg length discrepancy, and then. There are times where to get the right adjustment, I sometimes recommend going with a different pedal that helps us make the modification. But if you're dealing with a pedal that really requires that tread support, it's going to be tough, if not impossible, to get the right offset there to compensate for the leg length discrepancy.
So the answer there may be an equipment change. You may have to just invest in a new set of pedals that allow you to make enough adjustments to make up for the discrepancies. Let's move into our orthotics. And this is the reason I actually came to Nate's studio once, I was having tremendous foot pain in my metatarsals, and we did some footbeds, I think, here, and also worked on my fit a little bit too. I ended up spending more money on my insoles, my orthotics, than my actual shoes to deal with my problem, and it worked. But I get the hesitation here with folks. They spend on a pair of nice mountain bike shoes up to $400. Geez, Nate, why do I have to spend more money on insoles or orthotics? Shouldn't I just be able to use what's in these things and be good?
Well, if I totally agree. If you pull out the stock footbed that's in most of these shoes, just look at the support that you're getting of it. It's usually some sort of foamish material, and absolutely no support. So you're getting this awesome, amazing shoe, but then you're not finishing the full fit of the shoe with the proper support of the sole. And so with that, going with even a good off the shelf insole, Bontrager, Specialized, there's a few options out there that you're not going to be spending a ton on. They are really, really good. The thing about getting a cycling specific insole is making sure it's not too thick, and that's what a lot of these companies have done. And so what I'll see some people be like, oh, I've got some walking orthotics that those cost me $600, $800, right? I'm just going to throw those in. And if you look at a couple of things, the heel support there is so thick that the heel, the foot comes out of the back of the cycling shoe. So already the fit and finish of how the shoe goes on is totally wrong there. Then also, what we're looking for is some basic movement of the actual foot itself. So like I make custom cycling specific insoles from the company Cedas. They're conformable insoles. With that, they're a very old company, French company that came from ski boot fitting. They're sort of leaders in that, and so with that, they've taken their same process and put it into other sports such as cycling. So they're able to give a insole blank that's very, very thin yet supportive when done right. And we're taking pretty much a mirror imprint of the rider's foot to get the right supports there. And it's amazing how when I first started making these riders with really high arches, I was like, oh, these are the people that are really going to benefit the most because there's so much volume that needs to be taken up there. In fact, most of the time with riders with really high arches, we actually have to be very conservative with how much arch support we do give. A lot of times people complain of, it almost feels like somebody's got their a knuckle pushing up into my arch, right? So with the right balance, it should just feel nice and even all the way through the foot. More of the foot's engaged, better displacement of load there. But then the riders who I've seen really benefit more than anybody are people with more collapsed arches. And so you'll take the mold and you'll be like, wow, that's amazing how little arch there is in the insole. And they come back and are like, gosh, I can't believe how much more comfort and support I have. I don't get hot spots, pressure points. I don't have to take off my shoes halfway through the ride, type of thing. And that's really critical. With that, I will back this up with it's not just getting proper. So you got a really expensive shoe. It's not just getting proper support on top of the foot, but it's matching proper support on the bottom of the foot. That's where it's really, really important. And most of the companies out there don't have that. To make sure once you have all that set, making sure that the shoe straps are correct. And this is something that I see all the time, whether it be road bikes, mountain bikes, you name it. People typically run their shoe straps too loose. Right, and so with that, the foot starts to almost try to take up that volume. Toes start to grab at the bottom of the shoe. We see foot discomforts there. So I always say just go to Goldilocks, and it sort of sticks with people. I have all these little sayings, and I apologize to everybody for it, but people will come back and yell at me and be like, "Oh, I was in the middle of my race, and your saying came up into my head." It's not too tight, it's not too loose, it's just right. Right?
Yeah.
Goldilocks. So with that, you start off a ride, it could be really cold, and you got the shoe straps pretty dialed down, right? And it's comfortable, it's nice. But then you get to the top of the hill, and gosh, all of a sudden it's 90, 100 degrees, and you're with that, your foot's going to swell. So you got to readjust sometimes. Super important, especially on the endurance races as well. Always making sure that you're finding that fine line of, okay, how are my feet doing? Are my toes getting a little tingly? All right, the blood flow might be going down. All right, recheck. Make sure that they are snug, right? So.
All right, here's a can of worms. Saddles. We almost forgot saddles. And I imagine, I'm just guessing here, that this is the thing you suggest people change the most when they come up here and sit on the bike. I might be wrong on that, and it may be the hardest thing to get them to change. What do we need to know about? Just implant a little background knowledge in our heads, so when we do go in and somebody says, hey, I think you need to change your saddle, we at least have an open mind about this.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to bone support and pressure, right? So with that, it's you could be on the right saddle, but you're just not sitting on it correctly. So fit can also affect, as I say, it can make or break a saddle. Right. So if we take a saddle and you're sitting on it improperly, and we get the rider to sit on it properly, it's like, oh wow, we change how they are. All of a sudden, a mediocre saddle is now really comfortable. Or, oh wow, yeah, that's hitting me in a different spot, and that's not as comfortable. So it's about getting that proper bone support. So sit bones, pubic bone, and with the latest version of saddles that are coming out from most of the manufacturers, they've really changed up their design, and a lot of people come back to me, oh, I need a saddle that has a cutout. Cutouts are sort of secondary, and they have been for so long. I remember when cutouts came out, back in the 2000s, and it was just a slot in the middle of the saddle, and it was like, okay, what is that really doing for us? They put so much more research and design into these cutouts, and so you take a men's saddle versus a women's saddle, and very, very different, which is excellent. That's, very different makeups. So with that, then, we'll also be looking at, very different shapes. We got very flat saddle, side to side, fore to aft, but then other saddles that have a lot more curvature to them. With that, it's I hate to generalize, but there are sometimes two camps with that, and a lot of people can't go back and forth with that. So it's trying a few saddles out and getting that feedback from the rider. Where are you feeling this? Where is the pressure? And it's amazing how many times I'll throw a saddle on and the light bulb just sort of clicks, and they're like, wow, I didn't realize. I mean, I've got a buddy, I just saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he's doing some endurance mountain bike racing, and gosh, he's been probably riding for 30 years, and he was like, yeah, I've been all right, but I put just within like 10 seconds, you just saw his face light up, and he's like, oh my gosh, like I really can't believe it. Now that's just here, in the fit stand and getting some feedback from here. I was like, great, all right, go ride it. Let me know how it works for you. And if we got to change things out further, yeah, we'll cross that bridge. But yeah, it goes out for long rides. And he's like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe I'm riding that old saddle. I was okay, but didn't know how much better it could be. Thing is, go back, even 2-3 years, a lot of these saddles didn't exist. So the new saddles that are coming out from most of the manufacturers are so much better than we've ever seen before.
All right, folks, you can probably hear in the background that Helen Santa Monica is starting to come to life. I think we're trying to open the shop here. And Nate and I have been here just before opening time, which has been great, but we're going to let them run their shop here in a few minutes. So again, if you're in the LA area and you want to hook up with Nate, Helen Santa Monica is one of his home bases. You're also in Santa Barbara, correct?
Yep, at Hazard Cycle Sport in Santa Barbara, and then Wins Wheels in Westlake.
Okay. Oh, in Westlake, that's in Ventura County, right in the LA County, Ventura County line, right there. And of course, loyalcoaching.com is your website. So again, folks, if you can get to SoCal, if you're in the SoCal area, look up Nate. He can get you fit. He'll set you straight. He'll make your Leadville better. If not, Nate, if somebody is listening in Virginia or Florida or Ohio, wherever they are right now, what should they look for if they're shopping for a fitter? Is there credentialing that they can reference? What are they looking for?
I mean, I do very little advertising whatsoever. A lot of it's word of mouth. And so with that, knowing, all right, if you're doing Leadville, you're doing a very particular event. Right, you're probably running with a group of friends that are like-minded. With that, all right, see who in the area is helping those riders specifically. Right, that's really, really critical. Bikefit.com, Paul Swift over there, he's got a great setup with educating a lot of fitters worldwide. And so with that, going on there, seeing, all right, who's in my area, and then following through with, all right, who's specializing in setting up mountain bikers, especially with the endurance crowd. It's doing your research, and shop fits are getting better and better all the time, but seeing somebody who's a true specialist at what they do, that's really critical.
All right, Nate, thanks again for being on the Leadville podcast. Here's to a comfortable and efficient Leadville Trail 100.
Thanks so much.
Again, big thanks to Nate Loyal. If you need a fit and you're in the Southern California area and we're out of this COVID-19 thing, then Nate has 3 locations for you. It's Helen Cycles in Santa Monica, where we did this interview. He's also in Santa Barbara, and about halfway in between Santa Barbara and Helen's in Santa Monica, he has a spot in Westlake Village. It's loyalcoaching.com for the website. Nate is a super good coach, super good guy, and he'll take care of your fit needs, whether you be racing a cross-country race, your local crit, or the Leadville Trail 100.
Yeah, I love the idea of a coach who is also really well-versed in bike fit, because the two really go hand in hand. Okay, Hottie, now I want to tell you about the design work for the Leadville 100 mountain bike podcast. Boy, that is long. The jersey that we are working on for this podcast.
Oh, and I'm excited to hear about it.
So as you know, I got paired up with Todd, who is one of the dedicated designers at DNA. He and I got on a phone call. I gave him a few design directions, a couple of Pantone colors that I like on my bike. I love orange and yellow, always have. And I wanted to make sure the show's title sponsor and our show logo and URL are visible whether you're wearing a hydration pack or not, because a lot of our riders wear them half the time. And so, it's something to think about. And I told him I wanted one of those designs to prominently feature flames, as a Hottie thing. And within 24 hours, it's seriously 24 hours after this conversation, he had 3 fantastic first passes at completely different jersey designs over to me. And one had a sort of a really classy, great yellow stripe and sort of polka dot thing for, the climbers polka dots jersey. One with a really sophisticated stripe pattern, and one that looks like it is literally on fire.
Yeah, that jersey, the flame jersey, puts the hottie in cycling clothing. There's no doubt about that. I'm not so sure I'm a fan of the one that looks like it's on fire, though.
It is a bold, bold color, and at some point, I'm going to find a way to use that. So it might make it more of a statement than some people want to make, but that's kind of the whole point with DNA. They gave us 3 great starter options to react to. You and I are saying what we like, what we don't. We're going to do a little mixing, a little matching, and then we're going to give them some feedback tomorrow. And for the yellow dots one, what if we took where those dots are and put little microphones where the dots would be?
Ooh, now that sounds like a podcast jersey. And how about making the stripe orange?
It could happen, right? And maybe move in, people aren't seeing what we're, the hand gestures I'm making, but, the buckle logo right now is high on the center of the back. What if we put it lower where the pockets are? So if I'm wearing a Usui pack like I'm likely to be wearing, put it there where people would still be able to see it. The fact is, we're going to be giving Todd a bunch of feedback, and he's going to take our good ideas and our stupid ideas, and he's going to make all of it look great. And that is just the first step in what DNA does. Once we nail down a design, and that'll take a couple more iterations probably, then Todd's going to take it from there, give it to one of their project managers, and they are going to make a pattern, and they're going to guide us through the different fabrics and fit options that they have. Then they are going to take care of the orders and the shipping, and they're going to put together a mini store so that our listeners can buy them. They're going to take care of fulfillment. They're going to do everything because you and I are content guys. I do not want to spend my life building a store and selling jerseys. These guys are a one-stop shop. They're going to do everything from designing to production to fulfillment, and you and I can focus on podcasting. And we're going to have a great kit for our listeners and for us.
And DNA offers all of these services, that is, to anyone. And you don't need to order hundreds of jerseys for them to work one out for you. Chances are, if you got a cycling crew, DNA can make you look better and feel better at a better price for less work than anywhere else.
Yeah, and they are offering a 10% discount to our listeners. Here's how you get it. You go to dnacycling.com, and in the custom apparel inquiry page, choose other in where did you hear about us, and then just type Leadville Podcast. It's pretty easy.
And if you're not making your own kit, stay tuned for info on how you can get ours. We're getting close here, folks.
Yes.
Either way, you're going to look awesome on race day.
Yes, with flames or without. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up Season 3, Episode 3 of the Leadville Podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, share it with your cycling friends, support our sponsors, and let them know right now is a good time to let them know you really appreciate them sticking with us and you and making this show possible.
Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch.
Yep, and follow us on Twitter. I am at Fat Cyclist. Hottie is at Michael Houghton. And you can also find us on Facebook very frequently in the Leadville 100 MTB participants group.
Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the starting line.
Fingers crossed.